It comes and goes. We're out here chasing a feeling. Up high, down low. We go from the floor to the ceiling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Tara Martini, along with the beautiful Becky McNattin. We are glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
And today is an exciting day. We have special guest Erica Nesvig back on the show to talk through mental health and a couple's relationship. Welcome, Erica.
Hi. Welcome.
So wonderful to have you today. And you were on the show with Tara and me a few months ago.
Yes.
And we had so many different questions about relationships between couples. People had a lot to say, and so much of what we were hearing focused on navigating conflict, which I think you could imagine is pretty common. It's an emotionally intense topic, but one that it's so important in the life of a couple. So Tara and I decided that we wanted to devote an entire show to talking directly about conflict for couples and how to process through it. And you are our resident couples expert today. I wanted to say first, before we jump into any questions for you, that conflict is part of every relationship.
It is.
Hear me, listeners. Conflict is part of every relationship. And conflict happens anytime you bring people together who have their own feelings, their own thoughts, and perspectives. So in a couple, there is going to be conflict. I know you agree with me, Erica.
Yes.
I want to address head on the myth that a healthy relationship is one void of conflict. This happens a lot. People believe that a healthy relationship is one void of conflict. And we get messages about conflict as well as how to move through it all the time. And so what would you say to this, Erica? What would you say about couples and conflict?
Exactly what you just said. It's inevitable and intrinsic to all relationships, every type. And the presence of conflict doesn't mean a relationship isn't good, which is a huge myth too. I think what's important is differentiating between what's constructive and what's destructive conflict, because very different types. But the difference between conflict that's productive versus and useful and restorative, or conflict that's destructive, useless, and harmful. I think people, if you're thinking about conflict, it has such a negative bias to it.
Yeah.
And the conflict that we are talking about when we use that word, and I think that always requires naming, is healthy conflict. I'm talking honest conversations. Essentially, they're just very honest, respectful conversations about your perspective.
And you're saying that the conflict itself isn't about certain concepts. It's how we approach those concepts. That healthy conflict is, how do I choose to engage with processing this?
Communication.
Yeah. And at the end, what you get from healthy conflict is connection.
Yes.
So there can be something beautiful as a result of conflict. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
It's scary. And again, this comes, for all the reasons we know, people's relationships with conflict come from their lives.
Well, their lived experience.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
I read an interesting article recently that noted over 1/3 of couples endorse different conflict styles from their partners. And I kind of wondered if this was higher, but 1/3 of people endorsed a different conflict style. And I get a sense from the work in mental health care, of course, that, you know, it could be a little bit different, but it highlighted to me the reality that many of us are in a relationship with someone who processes conflict very different from us. And do you have thoughts on that, Erica?
I absolutely agree with it. And one of the first questions I ask in couples intake sessions, and individual too, let's be honest, is, what is your relationship like with conflict? And specifically, what was it like in your home growing up with your family, your parents? Was it loud, scary, violent? Was it going in a different room, shutting the door and whispering and hearing your parents whisper about stuff never spoken about?
Yeah.
That, and most times it always clicks with someone. They know right away what conflict means to them, of it's scary, I avoid it, or we just never had it in my home. We never talked about anything.
Right. What was modeled for us around how do people have the feelings behind what creates conflict? What did they choose to do about it? Did you grow up in a family that said nothing?
Right.
Did you grow up in a family that pretended that it didn't exist? Was it explosive? So many thoughts, and a super fascinating topic. Right now, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we dig deeper into conflict. We're going to explore conflict styles and ways to engage in what Erica named healthy conflict, and what healthy conflict resolution looks like. We will be back in just a moment. Thanks for listening to Feels Out Loud.
You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. You gotta find your people.
God.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I'm Tara Martini with Becky McNattin. Let's dive right back into our discussion on conflict in the life of a couple.
Okay, so you too, but Erica, I'm going to address you. I have a lot of biases about conflict.
Same here, girl.
Okay, thank you, Tara. And I would guess that many therapists in the mental health world also share this bias. So I do think that this is likely a common thing. I see conflict as an opportunity. Mm-hmm. To learn about another person. In fact, I was just saying this morning that conflict is opportunity to create trust in a relationship. I believe that conflict can be this road to developing deeper connection, to learning about someone. And I found a poem. You guys know I'm a poem people. That absolutely highlights this. And I want to read it, and then I want your thoughts, both of you. Mm-hmm. So this is called "The Place Where We Are Right" by Yehuda Amichai. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Mm. And this has caused me to think about so many things. From the place that we're right, that I get this image of things have to look dug up in a world that conflict, and if we're specifically talking about conflict, if it can dig up our world like a plow, it seems like then there's literally new space for cultivation and growth.
Yep.
But digging things up looks messy.
It does look messy.
It doesn't look, as we say kind of in the poem, flowers don't grow in those spaces that are trampled down but look beautiful. Mm-hmm. They look kind of perfect. Mm-hmm. Looks like a yard and maybe flat. And so I just wanted the thoughts from the two of you on how does this poem make you think about conflict? What's your take?
Exactly what you're saying, that it is possible to turn conflict into connection. It just takes a lot of bravery, new skills, and hard work. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of, speaking like of Earth, there's this quote from Terry Real, a relationship therapist, and he says, "Relationships are our biospheres. We're not above them, we're in them. You can choose to pollute your biosphere by having a temper tantrum over here, but you'll breathe in that pollution by your partner's withdrawal, resentment, or lack of generosity over there. You and they are connected in an ecosystem."
Wow. You're connected in an ecosystem.
I mean, what you do with that ecosystem is crucial. So
yes.
Like digging up, cultivating, letting new growth in is essential.
Yes.
I would assume. Or you can just let it lie flat, dead, which is what I talk about maintenance all the time, right? This is what maintenance is. And it's hard. And the word itself is perfect because it sounds like that's work. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes maintenance most of the time. Mm-hmm. Healthy conflict is doing that maintenance and then getting good results of deepening the connection, understanding, realizing new things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can't have an ecosystem without that work.
No, it will die.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then if you look at a relationship like that, it's the same way. And I've had several clients who, and I think it's common for many adults who will see it as a badge of pride that, hey, in my relationship, let's say of 20 years or even a year, we've never had conflict. Mm-hmm. We've never fought. Mm-hmm. And I think for years, people just view that as like, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's the couple to be.
Right.
Now, and again, we have such a huge bias, Becky, because for me, right away, I'm instantly thinking in my head, what's missing? What's missing? What are you not exploring?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because with growth and love and commitment and connection comes conflict. So right. How deep can one's relationship be and connection be if you are never experiencing your own thoughts and conflict and things like that? And it is, I think, just that shift, right? In that if we can educate and show people what a healthy relationship looks like, what healthy conflict looks like, then maybe people will be okay being vulnerable in those situations.
And the concern, I'm like, there's a big difference between conflict and like being combative, being critical, being mean or direct, which is what I hear a lot. I'm just very direct. And I'm like, yes, that's good that you're upfront about being.
Because you want to be honest.
It requires empathy and grace. You cannot just say whatever you want and think, well, I'm good at conflict.
Yeah.
I'm like, that to me is unhealthy conflict. That's toxic. That's hurtful. That's
Well, that's
harmful.
not conflict because it's one-sided
Yes,
as well.
yes.
Conflict to me takes two people.
Well, that makes me think about the question of what you're talking about, kind of fair fighting.
Yes.
What would you say that means?
Respect, care, empathy. I think of like no low blows, no passive aggression, or triggering comments, no pulling something up to throw in someone's face, getting even. Like if someone is earnestly going out on a limb to talk about something that's clearly difficult and sensitive, it's witnessing that and letting that sit in, and you will inevitably feel uncomfortable or triggered or upset. How do you cope with that? Sometimes it's, I just need to time this out and take a little minute to digest this before I respond to you.
Yeah.
Or breathe or say, okay, I'm feeling really, really upset by this right now. I don't know if I can respond. That's okay to do. So much better than just attacking.
But that's hard.
Very
as
hard.
the partner to receive that and not see that as they're avoiding, right?
There's so much structure that's
Yes.
required around this and
Yes.
practice.
Yeah.
And I would guess you've seen couples move in what we would call a healthy direction. How have you noticed that, and what have they used that has allowed for that healthy direction?
A lot of risk, right? A lot of like owning that we need to do this. We need to have these conversations. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to hold myself accountable. It opens new understandings, new doors. I often tell people, I'm like, you're just ringing the alarm in your relationship. Something is wrong and we need to address this. And it's not an ultimatum. It's not delivered with any sort of threat. It's, if I don't tell you this, I will feel resentment down the road that I don't want us to. I would not bring this up if I didn't think it was going to be helpful or develop some sort of better understanding between the two of us.
Right.
Well, then it turns to apathy
Yes.
eventually.
And that imagery of what the poem says in terms of cultivation, you're not ruining anything by bringing something up.
You're pulling up the nutrients.
You're giving opportunity for cultivation to happen.
Yes.
And so you mentioned this in the first segment, but just very briefly, and I'd love your thoughts, Erica, around how does what was modeled for us around relationship conflict influence how we process conflict?
It's the language we learned growing up, right? It's what's been normalized for us in our ecosystems. And we are all at the mercy of our own histories here. Patterns we repeat, whether we know we're repeating them or not. Aggressive conflict is a very, you can see this. It's people either shut down immediately or they just go into it. And avoidant conflict, we never develop skills on how to have these conversations, which makes it even more difficult to move through them. Or feel comfortable or safe, which if you can, I encourage everyone to reflect on my relationship with conflict.
Yeah.
What do I know about it? And what comes to mind? And everyone will inevitably have a vision of something, even in a movie or something.
Almost like if we personify it
Yes.
as a person. Like,
Yes.
what is your relationship with conflict? And think about how you even hear the word. What does the word make you feel? I love that thought process that is with us all the time and is going to inform, it has been shaped by our life experiences, but is going to inform how we show up in those moments, particularly when we might be seeking and sharing something. We're going to be thinking about those times, whether we're aware of it or not, in what was modeled for us.
Well, and it's even taking the 2 seconds, and listeners can do this if they're in their car or at home. The idea of just doing that body assessment of when you say the word conflict out loud, where do you feel in your body? When you say the word conflict out loud, what visual from childhood comes to your mind?
Yeah, what image?
So telling.
Yes.
Right? Are you cowering in a corner? Is someone yelling?
Yep.
It is very telling because you're doing it without thinking.
Right. And you bring up such a good point, Tara, that I think in order to understand how we show up in relationships, we need to understand how we receive and respond to conflict as individuals.
We do.
We need to know what's happening for us.
Yep.
And I wanted the three of us to go through together conflict management styles, because I think how we know ourselves is going to help us in how we approach conflict in partnership. So there are lots of things you can look up online about conflict management styles, but these are 5 pretty typical styles around how we see conflict. And the first one is the accommodator. This is a person. So listeners, we're going to go through all 5 of them. If you see yourself or hear yourself in them, know we all fall into a category. And maybe there are times where we've moved through life based on certain relationships that we play a specific role, but you're probably going to find yourself falling into one of them. First one is the accommodator. And this person wants peace at all costs. Feels it is their responsibility to keep the relationship running smoothly. So this is going to be a person who says, it's all on me. I will do whatever it takes to end conflict. And so when we think about a stress response, this would be a person who has a flight stress response when it comes to conflict. They want to get away from it. They want it to end. So they will set aside their own needs to move through conflict in order to have their partner be happy. This may mean they bottle up their emotions. They may not share their relational needs. And in the end, might develop some resentment around not feeling heard by their partner. Thoughts, you two?
So this is that type where I'd say conflict is bad. It's scary. It's not going to lead to anything good. It's a negative impact on a relationship. And that is the bias, right? Of I'm assuming negative intent all the time with this.
Yeah.
Right.
And so of course I then do things that are not actually authentic to me just to make it go away. To what end?
Yeah.
I mean, this inevitably leads to an explosion or exhaustion, burnout, something.
Yeah. And minimization, feeling invalidated, and maybe even not practicing how am I feeling because I'm so focused on how my partner might be feeling.
Well, and the concept of they are purposely not sharing their feelings because they're, pushing away from it or pulling away from it.
Yep.
But in the end, the irony is then they're feeling not heard by their partner. Well, you're not feeling heard because you never shared in the first place.
It doesn't allow for deeper connection
Right.
because by default, they don't actually let anyone in to who they are, what they want or need.
And that wall just remains up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then we have the second conflict style is the avoider. And this person, if we think about stress response, is a freeze response to conflict. The idea of conflict is scary and creates a lot of fear. So it just can't exist. It cannot exist. And maybe these people, listeners, if you hear yourself in the avoider, you might have had conflict modeled pretty poorly for you. The freeze response might be childhood rooted. So if there is conflict occurring, you go back to that childhood space of remembering conflict. An avoider shuts down with conflict because they're flooded with emotion and perhaps even leave the situation. So if you're an avoider, you're going to look for conflict just does not exist. It isn't necessarily as the accommodator about meeting the needs of your partner. It can't happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
Yep.
Thoughts?
I like how you brought the difference from the accommodator. This is a lot of withdrawal, and this I see leading to a lot of feelings of depression, fear. Avoidance. That's in the name, and really bad examples of conflict, typically, and maybe like you said, trauma experiences or
So deeply rooted.
Yeah,
High spaces of maybe this aggression was witnessed. Be gentle with the idea. If avoidance seems like maybe where you fall in a conflict style, you may be one then who seeks to withdraw right away without even necessarily knowing it. We then have the compromiser. And this is a person who seeks to see conflict as a transaction. Transactions are the path out of conflict. This would be somebody who negotiates. Like, I'm going to do blank for you, and you do blank for me. These are the people who see value and sacrifice in a relationship. So they say, this is about, you're going to walk away with something, but I'm also going to walk away with something. And so they're great at seeking compromise. They might be too quick to seeking compromise. That could be where it doesn't serve.
That can get you.
Rather than think through how both people in the relationship might be able to get their needs met.
It's a step forward in conflict, but like you said, it leaves a lot of shallowness to it and always looking for a resolution, which so much, couples, really anyone in a relationship knows not everything has a simple solution. Sometimes it's accepting there is none.
Yeah.
And it also leaves out a lot of feelings here. So
it's a really good point that you bring up that for someone who's negotiating in terms of being the compromiser, that you would maybe frame conflict as we have to walk away with this ends. So we both give of something, but sometimes in conflict, the entire goal, Tara and I've talked about this on the show many times, is to just listen to the person.
Yes.
That is the sole component of just hearing someone. We also have then the competitor.
Ooh.
And in conflict, this is a person who really needs to be right in conflict. Someone who sees black and white with a right and wrong. And so they might be more focused on logic of, does the conflict make sense? And none of these conflict styles are bad. There's a great way to approach, one thing that really serves is if you approach it in a, well, what makes sense about this? What doesn't make sense?
A logical way of looking at it.
But in a stress response, these people are the fighters and tend to have some will around, you know what, this conflict is occurring maybe because you just haven't heard me yet because I'm right.
Right. Yes.
And what's cool about folks, listeners, if you see yourself as the competitor, they tend not to take conflict personally because they see it as a concept. It's more about what someone knows or doesn't know. So it's like, we're just in conflict here because you haven't fully understood what is yet.
Right.
They believe they are right and need to share their position passionately to another person. And they might end up arguing about concepts and not feelings, particularly if the conflict is about a perspective or an emotion. And what would you say, Tara? Erica already, I was going to say, what do you think, Tara? But Erica's like, I'm bubbly water.
Yeah. These are the people, I see these individuals always moving the goalpost, right? So like, even if we figure something out, it inevitably comes back up again. Yep. And it's now more and more like, well, now I'm right about this. See, I told you I was right.
Yep.
Things like that are, I would put a low blow. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you haven't really resolved a conflict then. You are truly just with like holding in and waiting to be proven right again, which isn't constructive. It's very toxic in a lot of ways, or can be. Again, loves to conflict. Sometimes it's not personal, but again, in a relationship, it often is.
It is. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it requires you to acknowledge, like, there's a lot of these concepts, right? You can either be right or you can be in a relationship. And anyone in long-term relationship
love that.
You're not being the right. It's not about that.
Right.
It's not right or wrong. It's
That's
just
hard to tell
different.
someone though who is this style.
Okay, and then we have the collaborator, who is a person who believes that conflict needs to be listened to. They tend to be people who are focused on solutions rather than the problem, and see them and their partner as teammates, kind of solving this collective problem, not separate issues. And they see their relationship as bigger than the conflict. These tend to be people who approach life with curiosity, but rather than a fight, flight, freeze response, they feel kind of an inner curiosity about conflict in general. Mm-hmm. And so they tend to ask questions rather than seek solutions.
Right. And I feel like the collaborator just inherently is moving toward that deeper connection, that instigates that, as far as, which would also be challenging though, if you're the collaborator and you're dealing with someone who has to be right.
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring up a really good point, Tara, because as I said in the very beginning, at least a third of couples endorse a mismatched conflict style. Yep. So
I find that statistic rather low, I feel like, but
you
had said at the beginning, it just seems low.
It seems low to me.
Seems low.
But you're bringing up a really good point. If we're seeing ourselves, knowing how we might show up to conflict, our partner also is going to show up with a different style. And none of these are right or wrong. Right. So hear us, listeners, they all have pros and cons. There's going to be challenges and benefits of every single style in conflict management. The thing is, when our partner is really different from us. And so, Erica, I have a thought about, like, how do you notice this in therapy when maybe you have a competitor style with an avoider or a compromiser with an accommodator? Because if someone is compromising and saying, like, I'll get this and you get this, and the accommodator's like, but it should just be about you.
Well, this is what therapy is, right? The collaborator, I would say, is often the therapist role, right? Mm-hmm. To provide voice to each party with curiosity and works to assign and understand, like, this is, let's be educated about your response to conflict. Mm-hmm. You understand your response to conflict. Mm-hmm. Can you guys see the patterns here? Like, why this is not constructive, or where's the wiggle room? Can you be accountable to this or validate this feeling? That's what a lot of couples therapy is. Mm-hmm. And you can pick up on these pretty quickly. I mean, if you're showing up, you're showing up. These things come out. And the goal is often for partners to be accountable for themselves and their own patterns, and then learning about their partner's patterns, and then starting to challenge these ingrained behaviors, these ingrained beliefs of, can I do something different? Is there a possibility to see a different perspective here?
Well, and to look at it too from the angle of, there's challenges and there's positives to any combination of conflict style. For example, we have just focused in this segment of if you have opposite styles. But I also, if you think about, well, what if you have two competitors? Holy cannoli.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm right. No, I'm right.
Yeah.
But wait, no.
Keeping score. Yeah, the couples
Yes.
that keep score, that, I mean, these are all, they're all common.
Yes.
They're all these. Every one of these exists.
Yep.
And it's really, what's really interesting about couples work is to find out how they make it work. And sometimes people have their own unique systems of, I just accept this, or I support this, or I just let him do his own thing, or whatever it is. It's figuring out what those patterns are.
Right.
And sometimes accepting, like, this isn't going to be different. If your expectations are for this to be wildly different, realistically, is that going to happen? Can that happen?
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And you're talking about maybe some of the times that things don't go well in terms of destructive communication habits. You've mentioned a few even as we've been meeting, and how knowing something about our partner and perhaps what their conflict management style allows us to have some empathy in approaching conflict so we can avoid some of these destructive habits. But what would you list some for us? There might be lots, but
The destructive habits?
yeah.
Disrespect. I mean, like avoidance, being mean, mocking, just things that are truly like, if I'm sharing something vulnerable and I'm distracted, I'm avoidant, I'm changing the topic, or I forget about it. I don't actually show up with this. We're not on the same page of what we actually want at all. Or especially with those compromises, like people that are looking for that can make it seem so transactional of feelings that can be incredibly hurtful. And I mean, we talked about this last time I was here about the four horsemen of Gottman's four horsemen of the apocalypse.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm like, or Gottman's. But apocalypse sounds pretty fitting.
Well, let's move to that. I want to talk about Gottman because for our listeners who maybe haven't heard of John Gottman, he is a well-known, we call him sort of an expert in this realm of couples and romantic partnerships. He has spent his whole career developing content for like everything relationships. And he actually notes 4 different styles of conflict for couples. So in addition to individual conflict management styles, John Gottman has developed couples conflict styles. And the first one is being conflict avoidant. So this wouldn't necessarily be how individuals are, but this is collectively what the relationship is around conflict. And these are couples who tend to focus on areas of agreement and are most comfortable when spaces of mutual agreement grow. So they try to find the spots where they would overlap with positivity rather than what is conflictual. They tend not to make active requests of one another and focus on what John Gottman calls congruency. They like boundaries with one another and fairly independent functioning from one another. They really like their independent lives. These couples are empathetic. They tend to be pretty fair-minded. They're pretty comfortable with less emotional sharing. And I wondered, Erica, what would you say conflict looks like with this couple?
You know, as I'm listening, I'm like, these feel like sneaky conflict things for couples like this, because I think they're pretty quick to be like, it's fine. It's no big deal.
I was going to say, to me, it seems like this couple, what conflict might look like, there is no conflict.
Right. And then again, when there is a thing that goes wrong, it's fine.
Yep.
Don't worry about it.
Yep.
And yet I'm
We're
like,
good. Everything's fine. Yep.
What do you mean? Like, oh, you're pretty chill about that. That's
okay, really good point. So conflict with this couple might appear more subtle.
Yes.
It isn't necessarily going to look explosive, which is the second conflict style for couples. This would be, John Gottman calls this volatile. And this is lots of intense emotion. These are, and it's not necessarily bad. So hear us, listeners. If you have a volatile, this doesn't necessarily mean aggressive, that people are throwing things, but it's high emotion, competitive, and try to win over their partner. And so this is a lot of continuous advocacy around points of view. But people who have a volatile relationship can do this with humor and wit. They aren't necessarily using some of the destructive habits that you talked about, Erica. These are couples who respect one another in their emotional expression and really love a good debate. Mm-hmm. So they are high in this might be two competitors who are just high passion about.
I feel like it's a lot of Italians as well.
It might be a lot of
You just described my entire family.
And these couples might have messy overlap of emotions and don't have the same boundaries as the conflict avoidance style.
So these are the couples where I would say where I want to be like, where is the acceptance to like, can we put this down? Can we accept it never ends, right? The moving of the goalpost of it's always being brought up again. There's no acceptance of let's just let this die.
Because they're just like, oh, honey, no, you pick that right back up.
Yes.
Like it's not hitting the table.
And so to me, this exhausts me, right? And there's one thing to be like, we're just debating. And then there's another thing to be like, here we go again.
Yep. You got to let it go.
Yes. Or can we choose to move forward together?
Yep.
And you're talking about, are we processing the conflict or are we processing content now? What's the point of this? Because have we moved into a spot of, I just need to win now?
What's the purpose?
Now it's wills.
Yep. And how does it serve us?
And I can see a lot of couples loving this, right? This can be their banter. This can be and if that, like the humor and wit, if that is, you are on board for it and there's joy brought from that and respect, great. But again, I'm like, all of these require such honesty of your feelings.
Yes.
Same with the avoider ones where I'm like, if you truly are, it's fine. I'm good. And I'm going to believe you. Good. But if that isn't honest and you're not okay, you just don't want to deal with it or don't know how to approach this any other way, that's where the issues come in.
Well, and it's looking at, is it humor or is it mixed with sarcasm? Right? And then, so it's looking at, are they masking it with something else?
Mm-hmm. Well, so then we have validating couples. And in this conflict style for couples, these tend to be pretty easygoing folks. They, as Gottman says, go along to get along and have high levels of empathy with one another. Their first route is to try and take their partner's perspective and are very selective about conflict that they choose to make a big deal. Conflict resolution tends to look like a lot of compromise in this style. And maybe they have a really large let it go pile that I'm thinking along the side of the conflict avoidance, conflict could look sort of subtle as in this relational style. What would you say, Erica?
These are the couple, I'd say this is like what role playing in therapy would look like. Okay. A lot of like, please say your feelings. Can you validate it? I'm going to validate. I hear you. But it's rehearsing how to have a healthy conflict, which I was going to say, these sound like TV couples, like a Hallmark movie couple where it's like everything, we talk out our feelings, we name.
We use active listening.
And again, it's healthy.
Yes.
And I think it gets mocked because everybody knows life just is never that convenient all the time.
Or, one thing I'm thinking about is if it's a validating couple, when there's a really intense feel, because if they go along to get along and are very selective about conflict, they choose to make a big deal. What about the big deal? So when you're in the big deal, what do you do then?
Right.
Because if what you've built a muscle around is those things, how are you applying that to what's the really huge deal?
Well, and absolutely possible, right? I think, and that's like I tell a lot of couples when we do this, I'm like, make it your own, use your own language and words. But if you have the skills, you can do this to make it natural to not sound like I validate your feeling, but to be more like, here's where I'm coming from. I hear you, but this is what's been bothering me. You can make this so relational and natural. It just takes a lot of practice and trust in your partnership that you can do this together,
which is huge.
And then the last style that we have is a hostile conflict resolution style. And this is, you've referenced several of these things, Erica, and a repeat style of a cycle that's around attack and defend. So conflict is about attack my partner, defend my position, attack my partner, defend my position. And they use what John Gottman calls the 4 horsemen. So I want to talk about these because couples tend to have the same fights repeatedly, or they are really similar fights with the same undertone. And sometimes people stay in hostile relationships because they're avoidant of intimacy. So these aren't necessarily relationships that end, but they are not very healthy relationships.
Well, and like Gottman says, these are the biggest indicators, right? Of if you have these all the time, the biggest indicators if a couple will stay married or not, because
His divorce predictor.
Yeah,
His
which
divorce
is just, he's just this gifted
Yes.
human.
So his 4 horsemen, criticism, strikes at the character of your partner. Things like, you never help me. You can't do it right. Contempt. And I think you mentioned contempt a little bit ago. So that's the second one. Contempt. This is being mean-spirited. Yeah. This is literally cruelty. Yep. Saying things to be purposefully hurtful to the other person. And that might mean because we're coming from a place of our own hurt, but we're looking to be hurtful. So name-calling. Erica, you said mocking, ridicule, things like you act like a child all the time. Mm-hmm. We have defensiveness. Making your partner feel minimized and devalued and not hearing their concerns. So someone might say things like, you're seriously going to ask me about that right now? Seriously going to ask me about that right now? Did I not tell you I was going to do it when I could? And then we have stonewalling. So that's the last one. This is being checked out of what is being said. Think of a stone wall. Person just shuts down and goes silent. And this could even be somebody who turns away or walks away in the middle of another person saying something. So we have criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. If these are present, this is something that could really use some probably professional help. Mm-hmm. What would you say to the 4 horsemen and your thoughts, Erica, about this?
They just because they show up does not mean that it's the end of the relationship.
Right. That's important for everyone to hear. Because if someone's driving and it's like, wait a second, there's criticism. Now I have to get a divorce.
We all do this at times.
Right. We do. We're human.
You have to be accountable. Mm-hmm. And again, I want to get better at this. It's not. If you can recognize, it's not fair when I said that to my partner. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that to you. That is, you can work with that. Mm-hmm. I think the stonewalling one is always on the last, like this is done of, you could be on fire in front of me and I'm not going to flinch. Mm-hmm. Of not engaging, even if you go to therapy, it's just like dead on arrival. That's unworkable for me personally.
That apathy piece.
Yeah, just I'm done, and even if you're trying to connect with me, trying to talk to me about stuff, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
that's a big thing to come to in a relationship.
Yeah. So how does understanding how we communicate in conflict help us navigate conflict?
We learn to be accountable for our actions, and we learn how we impact the people around us, our partners especially. Ideally, we learn to sense when we're escalating, when we need to be de-escalated, when we need a break, when we're being unfair. Mm-hmm. You own your pattern, right? You just you own. I've always had an unhealthy relationship with conflict. It's something I owe to the people in my life to get better at, and I'm going to get help. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to learn.
So, what are some actual? Because I love tangible takeaways. What are some exercises, techniques, strategies? A few before we leave. And get to questions that listeners could use to help.
Take breaks if you need it. If you learn, I mean, this is all therapeutic work, right? Like when your body is tense, don't ignore that. Mm-hmm. Take some deep breaths. If you're in the middle of it with your partner, you can say, I need to bot out for a while. Mm-hmm. Don't force or push conflict just because we have to talk about this. Yep. Do not do that. Mindfulness around this is so important.
That's a really good point.
And give yourself permission to just breathe and take a break.
It doesn't have to get resolved. Not everything has a resolution. Couples with conflict that are good at conflict don't have less problems. They just accept, we just know how to do this in healthy ways.
Mm. Well, and what I hear you saying is, in terms of strategy, trust that it doesn't have to happen right now.
Yes.
So conflict resolution can get paced. Mm-hmm. Processing can get paced. And so you're saying healthiest strategy is know what's going on with you. Be open about reflecting that.
Be honest with yourself and your feelings. It is, if you can do that, you can truly do anything. If you can own and know how you feel, and even you don't have to tell anyone else all the time, but if you can, in your own mind and self and body, own what you need or what your feeling is, you can work through most of this.
Well, I think we're making so many people squirm as they listen to this because, wait, we don't necessarily have to solve the conflict right now because it goes against everything, right? Because before it's fix it, move on.
Totally.
Solution
focused work has a purpose.
Yes,
it can be incredibly and that decisiveness. I love problems like that. Yep. A lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of differences in conflict styles, differences in backgrounds make it difficult to have a neat little package to put it in of we've resolved this. A lot of it's acceptance and just we are choosing to move this forward together.
Well, life is not a beautiful package. Right. It's messy.
Yes.
Well, so much to think about here. I feel like we need to put that on a T-shirt. We are headed to a commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk through listener questions about conflict in relationships. Feels Out Loud is going to process your questions and thoughts in just a moment. Thanks for listening.
You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. You gotta find your people. Express yourself.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you, our beautiful listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly. Or email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. We truly want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
And listeners, thank you for sending in questions about what I'm going to say is a pretty vulnerable topic.
For sure.
Conflict in relationships for couples. And Erica, we had a lot, but we chose two because we felt like they sort of encompassed this idea of what couples might be wondering about conflict. First listener says, what would you say are some essential questions to ask your partner during a conflict?
This is great. It's really general. I think the context is so important here, but generally I'd say this is therapy. I would truly ask, what are you feeling? Like, what are the feelings happening right now? If it's like anger or hurt or confusion or sadness, kind of getting an idea of where are we at with this. And where is this coming from? Like, walk me through the story in your head, the narrative around this, help me understand your perspective. And if you're not understanding, you can ask for more clarity. You can say, I'm not fully understanding where you got this idea from. And again, just be honest. I don't want you to take this the wrong way or think I'm not listening. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to. I'm not fully on board with you. Mm-hmm. If it's escalating, pull back. Truly. Okay. If it's escalating, take a moment, pull back, take a break, sleep on it. It is okay to go to bed mad sometimes and to say, we need to just let this digest for a second.
Now, what if your partner said, when you ask the question, how are you feeling? What's going on in there? And the person says, I don't know.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yep. Because everyone's wondering. Because how joyful, you're wonderful if the person was like, I am resentful and angry and slightly annoyed.
Right. Say, okay.
Yep.
I must, like, this is hard, right? I feel like I'm doing this in my own relationship right now. I'd be like, I can feel like you're a little bit angry with me. Mm-hmm. Is it about this thing we never talked? Is it about, like, you can kind of do a little bit of gentle guessing. I would not put that on them of, you're angry.
Yeah.
You're so mad right now.
Kind of go over their nonverbals. Like,
curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of like, and you can bring it to the context of, I'm assuming this is about this. Yeah. Do you want me to talk more? Like, gentle curiosity.
Well, and you bring up what actually our other listener had a question about, which was, because you said, is it about this thing? Mm-hmm. This person says, I feel like I need to go back to a conflict that never got resolved.
It's a great question.
How can I do this?
First, so common and so healthy. Like, I do this all the time in my own life. It's, again, that honesty and clarity. Being mindful of the timing. Is now a good time? Could we talk later tonight? And not with that ominous, we need to talk. But a true, like, hey.
No one's ever used that before.
Not that very misleading, scary thing. But, hey, if you have time later, I'd love for us to set some time aside. I'd like to just talk to you about some stuff. Mm-hmm. Make it like we're non-distracted. We're in a good headspace. Mm-hmm. I know we've talked about this before, or this has come up before. I've thought about it more, and I have some things that it feels fair to share with you. Mm-hmm. It's so clear and upfront and honest, and again, kind. You're not being mean. You're not throwing it back in someone's face. You're just being honest with, I still have this feeling.
Mm-hmm. And it's
something's been on my mind.
Yes. I want to work on it with you. I'm bringing it to you. I'm ringing that alarm, again, because I care about you. And I know, I've said this so many times to friends. I know if I don't bring this up, it's going to create resentment, which I care about you too much to do. So we need to work through this.
Yep.
Well, and you have a really great way for us to hold, if there's something that you have an experience of resentment about, that's a key marker of something you might need to bring up in your relationship.
Yes.
So you've said the word resentment probably 6 times in the show today.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving with this, like, this awareness of self. If there's something that you have that, you need to verbalize that. You need to verbalize that. We are at the end of our show already for today. Wow. Thank you for listening this morning, and thank you for coming, Erica.
Thank you. Amazing.
Join us next week as we talk through masking our realness and the impact it has on our mental health. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember that connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one that the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.
Some don't, some will, some won't. I wanna be